Chapter 8. I'm going to ask you to stand if you can. Joshua chapter 8 is where we're going to be starting off at this morning. Joshua 8. I'm going to start reading in verse 1 is where we'll be starting off. Verse 1, it says, "And the Lord said unto Joshua, Fear not, neither be thou dismayed. Take all the people of war with thee, and arise, go to Ai. See, I have given into thy hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land. And thou shalt do to Ai and her king as thou didst unto Jericho and her king, only spoil the king thereof, and the cattle thereof shall ye take for a prey unto yourselves. Lay thee in ambush for the city behind it." So Joshua arose and all the people of war to go up against Ai, and Joshua chose out 30,000 mighty men of valor and sent them away by the night. And then skip down with me verse 24 and 25. "And it came to pass, when Israel had made an end of slaying all the inhabitants of Ai in the field, in the wilderness wherein they chased them, and when they were all fallen on the edge of the sword until they were consumed, that all the Israelites returned unto Ai and smote it with the edge of the sword. And so it was that all that fell that day, both of men and women, were 12,000, even all the men of Ai." And let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and then I'll let you be seated this morning. Lord, I do want to thank you for, Lord, this opportunity that we have to be here, Lord. And I thank you for the messages that we heard last night and this morning, Lord, the way that you've spoken to me through your word the last couple of days, Lord. And I do pray that you will use this time now, Lord. Speak to us, Lord. I pray that you will use me, Lord. Help me not to get in the way of what you have for us today. I pray this in your name. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. I'm going to kind of jump right into this. Where we started, we jumped into this passage right after the defeat of Ai. So up to this point, children of Israel, and I know everyone in this room knows this, but bear with me for a second. Up to this point, children of Israel have been riding a high. They've they've recently had the crossing of the Jordan, which is a monumental time for the people. This is something that has been years in the making. You know, you think about it, 40 years previously, they came right to the brink of the water and didn't get to pass over and spent the last 40 years wandering. This is huge. The fact that you finally get to take that step and cross over is a big thing. They're riding a high, and then add to it, they get across Jordan in what can only be described as a miraculous way. And this is the second time for them to have a water crossing like this, but it's not like this is a normal thing. Then they follow that up shortly thereafter with the victory at Jericho, which we know was a victory that militarily doesn't work. And yet God gives them the way, and they follow his plan and his will, and he gives them what's an amazing victory. A victory that really, you read it, and it sets the nations and the people of the area on notice that, hey, there's something different about these people, and more than that, there's something different about their God. Not the message, but something that we could really catch on to, that if we do things God's way, not only will God bless it and God work, but it puts people around on notice that, hey, there's something different about their God. The victory that they had in Jericho, it sends out a warning that their God has already promised them this land, and they're just coming to take it. I'm not going to take the time to turn back there. To me, that is one of the most telling passages when the kings all get together and they aren't saying the children of Israel are coming to possess the land. Their enemies say their God's already given them the land. They already recognize what's happening here. God's given it, they're just coming to take it. They are in a spot where they are riding that high. They're in that mountaintop experience. Things are looking really good, and they're feeling good about themselves. They are seeing spiritual victories. Almost getting to the place of, well, we don't even need God right now because things are going really good. We got this. And then the defeated Ai. And the natural thing for people when they face defeat, even coming from that, things are going good and I'm riding this momentum and life is going how I want it to, the natural thing when we hit defeat is to give up, to stop trying. You see it all the time. You see it in kids that, they have some new thing that they're trying to learn, and at first it's new and it's exciting, but then the first difficulty comes and every kid has the same reaction. They want to stop. You teach your kid to ride a bike. The promise of a new bike is an exciting thing. When our kids were at the point of taking off the training wheels, I wasn't above bribing my kids, so I would tell them, you learn to ride without training wheels, I'll go buy you a brand new bike. That's an exciting thing for a kid, that gets to ride without training wheels, and I'm going to get a bike. So, every kid wants to do it, but the first time that they fall and scrape their knee, every kid is ready to give up. And every dad, after 30 minutes of running back and forth down the road, chasing their kid on that bike, is ready for their kid to give up. But the kid, they've had that first fall, and suddenly they don't want to ride the bike anymore. It's not as exciting as it used to be. All of a sudden, there's defeat, and that defeat hurt, and they're ready to give up. We see it in adults. For a lot of people, you see that in their marriages. Everything is new and exciting, and it's working, and when a marriage is working right, there's absolutely nothing better. But in marriage, there comes some times that are less than victorious. And when those times come, there's a lot of people who are just ready to give up. They had a defeat, and they don't know how to move past it. For some, it's in their job, or pastors, we're not above that. Because there are times that ministry is victorious. That you're feeling good and things are going well and God is blessing, and we are not above starting to think, I have this pastoring thing handled pretty well. But there are also times that you're taking some major defeats. People getting upset or stirring things up or whatever it is. Let's be honest here today. Those times hit, and it hurts, and it's pretty easy just to decide to give up, wouldn't it? We're not above that. We take a defeat, and the natural is, well, I'm just gonna give up. You see it in pastors. You see it in new Christians that they're saved and they're growing and they're excited, but then that first defeat comes, whether that's giving back into a sin that they had tried to stop, or discouragement from someone not listening as they give the gospel, or whatever it is, and they fall away. They give up. And here's what I want us to try to look at today. Defeat will happen. I told you, I'm not as nice as Brother Nelson. I'm going to start this off negative. Defeat will happen. Defeats come. It doesn't matter how successful a person is or how victorious their life seems to be from, outside looking in. Every one of us face defeats. I'm not trying to be negative, but it's a truth here. I spent some time for this message studying some kind of famous generals through history. Some of them that are considered top generals for their time, and even guys who are known for victories, but they all face defeats. Think of some of I'll give a couple of examples that had some major victories, but also some major defeats. Someone like MacArthur, credited with the success of the Pacific Theater despite inadequate supplies or troops. Played a major role in victories in both World War I and II. A man with a lot of victories in his career, but he also played a major role in the Korean War, which most wouldn't define as a victory. How about Eisenhower? A man who you look at Eisenhower, had a long, successful military career. Went from there to being our president. Many would see, if you stopped there, many would see that as a successful life, but most often when he's remembered for his failure to defuse the Cold War. Here's the point. Defeats happen even for successful people. They're unavoidable. The question is not this morning if you will or won't have losses. The question is, how will you respond after them? When you fall down. when it hurts. Joshua and the children of Israel could have had a few options here. They could either turn around and run back across the river to the desert like they kept threatening to do, or they could get over it and move on. So this morning, what are you going to do after defeat? And I have three things I want to see out of this passage that God leads Joshua and the children of Israel to do after they've fallen down, after a defeat. First thing, simply this: get up. Look at Joshua chapter 8, verse 1. Lord said unto Joshua, fear not, neither be thou dismayed. Take all the people of war with thee, and arise. And arise. Get up. Joshua just wants to lie down and complain. The defeat has hit them, and God tells them, hey, get up and get back at it. Lying there, wallowing in your defeat does no good. Lying there just in pain because, man, I took this defeat and it hurt and there's this problem, does no good. Now, I will freely admit this has been easier with my sons than with my daughter. I'll admit that. But when my boys were little, they'd fall down and, scrape their arm or hurt themselves or whatever it's going to be. And, a kid's first reaction when they hurt themselves is to lay on the ground and cry about what hurts. Growing up, my dad would make a big deal, about, oh, look at that awesome goose egg you had, or, that scratch or whatever it was. My method was when my boys would fall down and hurt themselves, I'd tell them, get up and show me your guns. Like, flex, let me see what you got. Because when a boy stands up and flexes his muscles, all of a sudden he doesn't care that there's blood. That just makes it cooler. Because lying on the ground in agony never helped anyone. So that's my daughter is not going to love me today. So that's my son's. I'm sorry, Kaylee. Only sort of, but I have a picture of my daughter. I told you it was easier with my sons and my daughter, but I have a picture of my daughter on my phone that she had just got. Her brother was playing like boys do, and so she had just got hit on the head with a garden rake. And looking back, I probably should have taken her to get stitches because gashed her head open and was bleeding pretty good. And instead, I thought, well, I'll just take her in the bathroom and, clean her up. Lisa was away, so, what are you going to do? And my daughter, being my daughter, goes, wait. She wanted a picture of the blood running down while she's flexing before so I could send it to Lisa while she was away at a ladies' retreat, which not advisable to do at all. But I have a great picture years later from it because I had taught her laying there crying does no good. I don't know, maybe someone could. I would challenge you to come up with one example where laying on the ground, wallowing in your pain has helped anyone. It doesn't. And the same is true. I know those are all, smaller examples, but the same is true when we have defeat in life. Laying on the ground crying about your defeat's not going to help anything. What do you do after a defeat? You get up and stop whining about it. Looking at Joshua, what good would it have done had the children of Israel, now in the promised land, decided, well, after this defeat, we just can't muster the people to do anything else. So rather than moving forward and rather than taking the land that God's given us, we're just going to stay here in the ruins of Jericho crying at what happened in Ai. I mean, their enemy would have seen that as an opportunity of weakness and destroyed them. No, they needed to stop their whining because the problem with whining is it's all about me. I won't have us go back there right now, but if you go back and read chapter 7 after the defeat, Joshua has rent his clothes and falls on the ground, and he is crying to God, and it is all that Joshua does is I related. What am I going to do? And our whining after a defeat is exactly that. Crying over, well, what does this mean for me? How is this going to affect, me? How is this going to affect my ministry? Crying over, what's this going to do to me? So what do you do after defeat? You get up and stop whining. You get up and stand. I I guess I don't have a whole lot of problem admitting this. I'm a cold, mean dad. You figured that out already. I don't think I'm a terrible dad, but I'm a cold, mean dad, right? So when my boys fall down, they're lying on the ground crying. You know, there are some really nice parents that they'll get down on the ground and they'll console their kid, and, you know, they'll try to make them. I walk over and tell them, well, stand up and stop crying. You know, I can't understand what you're saying when you're crying. Get up and stop crying. You know, when they were little, I was just that kind of dad. It sounds cold. It's just the way I am. Laying on the ground never helped anyone. You aren't going to heal. You aren't going to heal by laying on the ground crying about pain. Hey, you have some blood coming out, lick it off, clean, get up, and let's go. You know, the more I say it, the worse it sounds, but I'm just keep saying it. I grew up watching rodeo, having a dad that used to ride bulls. I got narrative. I loved it because I got narrative from the announcers and then from my dad sitting next to me. So it, you know, just made it where you're just hearing all sorts of stuff. And I remember one time we went to a little rodeo in a town near us, and we were right by the military base, so they had military bull riders. These were guys who had never been on a bull in their life, but, you know, some buddy of theirs dared them to hop on the back of a bull, so they did. And I remember specifically one time a guy got thrown from the bull, and he hit the ground hard. I am sure it hurt. And just laid there. Okay, well, while hitting the ground hurt, that bull is still there. That's going to hurt more. So I vividly remember the announcer, as this guy's laying on the ground hurt, yelling, "Get up and run, boy." Because while that hurt, it's going to hurt more. Life isn't a whole lot different. Defeats in life hurt. We've established that. We've said it a few times already this morning. And sometimes after a defeat, it feels like you ought to just be able to lay there and cry a little, doesn't it? But that's not the way to get over defeat. Spiritually, it's no different. We face a spiritual defeat. Stand back up. What do you do after a defeat? Number one, get up. Number two, seek God. Chapter 7, verse 6. So back one chapter from where we're at, Joshua rent his clothes, fell to the earth upon his face before the ark of the Lord until the eventide, he and the elders of Israel, and put dust upon their heads. And Joshua said, "Alas, O Lord God, wherefore hast thou at all brought this people over Jordan to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us? Would to God we had been content and dwelt on the other side Jordan." The defeats come, and Joshua immediately went to God. Notice Joshua didn't go to his counselors. They didn't suffer defeat, and he goes to, you know, the wise men to see what went wrong. If you remember, it was the quote-unquote wise men who said, "We don't need to seek God on this. We'll just go take Ai." You know, we know he had some that he could have consulted with, but he didn't go to them. Joshua didn't go to his generals. It's not, you know, Joshua going to his generals going, "Guys, I need a debriefing on what went wrong here. You know, this was supposed to be an easy win. That's what you told me, and we wound up getting whooped here. Men died. Fathers didn't come home. What went wrong?" Joshua didn't go home and cry to his family. You know, telling them about how hard it was being a leader of these people that are always just complaining and always backbiting, you know. Crying about this, you know, just doesn't understand what went wrong. No, the defeat came, and Joshua knew exactly where to go. Joshua ran straight to God. Now, I don't think Joshua handled it all right. I told you, he went to God complaining and upset that God hadn't done what Joshua wanted him to do. While he may have gone there with the wrong motives, at least he went to the right source. When we face defeats, seek God. Listen, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with men who we can seek counsel from or anything like that. I have actually some of the men in this room who are guys who I go to for counsel and for prayer and those things. But it shouldn't be the first place that we turn when we need, or when we either face a spiritual defeat or need spiritual guidance. It ought to be God. Throw this in there. When facing spiritual defeat, we shouldn't go crying to our family too much either. I heard someone a while back, and I don't remember where I heard this, but I heard this and I wrote it down. I thought it was great, saying, you know, if we don't want the members of our church to have roast pastor for lunch, perhaps we shouldn't have roast members. Listen, running to your family to complain about your defeat won't help. Seek God. Seek God for that comfort you need. Defeats hurt. I understand that there are no two ways about it. Joshua in this, they lost men. He lost soldiers. That brings physical pain, obviously, for those hurt or killed, but emotional pain for their families and for their leaders. And I have to think that he lost some of the confidence of the people that are following him. He probably lost some confidence himself. Both physical and emotional pain when you take a defeat, but God can comfort and show you how even defeats are part of his plan and bring you back where you need to be, where he needs you to be. I've been asked a few times in the past, if I could do anything over again, would you? If you could change anything, would you? And I think I'm 100% honest in this. No. Because even the things that were defeats, that would be defined as defeats in my life and that hurt at the time, and I've had some, but God used them to bring me where I am today. But only he can bring the comfort to see that. Seek God for comfort. Seek God for strength. Among other things, you know what this particular defeat did. It reminded Joshua and the children of Israel how much they needed God. This defeat today, I reminded them, oh yeah, we can't do this ourselves. I need God. Like I said at the start, they just had some big victories and had gotten to where they're feeling pretty good about themselves. Good enough that when they saw Ai, they thought, well, this is a small place. We don't need God. In fact, we don't even need the whole army. We'll leave most of them at home and just bring a small group and just, wipe this out. Well, God doesn't need to worry about this one. We've got it under control. We have enough strength in just a small portion of our army to beat these guys. But this defeat reminded them that they didn't have the strength on their own. They had to have God. Defeats in our life often remind us of the same thing because like the children of Israel, we forget how much we need God, don't we? Because we get feeling pretty good about ourselves sometimes. I'm doing this Christian thing pretty good on my own. I'm pretty good at this pastoring thing and I don't need God's help. Oh, we would never say that. But it's how we act sometimes, isn't it? We get pretty confident in ourselves. Again, after a defeat, seek God for comfort from the pain. Seek God for the strength that you need. Seek God for direction. We see chapter 8, verse 1 and 2. The Lord said unto Joshua, fear not, neither be thou dismayed. Take all the people of war with thee, and arise. Go to Ai. See, I have given into thy hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land. And thou shalt do to Ai and her king as thou didst unto Jericho and her king. Only the spoil thereof and the cattle thereof shall ye take for a prey unto yourselves. Lay thee an ambush for the city behind it. And it goes on from there on the direction. Notice what goes on here. They have a defeat. Joshua wants to cry about it. In chapter 7, God tells him, get up, deal with the sin in the camp, and they have all of that to, find the sin in the camp. And then God gives Joshua, starting chapter 8, the direction to go from there. That's what going to God will do. It'll comfort you. It'll get you through over the pain of the defeat, and it'll strengthen you and to help you recover. But then it will give you the direction to go. What do you do after a defeat? Get up, seek God, and then last thing I want us to look at this morning, move forward. Have you ever noticed God doesn't give them time to sit back and recoup from the defeat? There's no healing time here. God doesn't say, deal with the sin in the camp, and then take some time to lick your wounds. I know this was hard, guys. So just take some time. You're in Jericho. Get comfortable. Just take some time here. Relax. Recuperate for a little while. Lick your wounds, and then we'll go. God doesn't allow time to sit and complain about what happened. Or time to grow complacent in where they are. Because that could have happened. The next step is hard. They know the next step is another battle. The next step is going to be a hard thing. Jericho, you could grow complacent in Jericho. Sure, the walls are falling down, but it's pretty nice. Maybe we could just stay here. He doesn't give them time to grow complacent in the place they are. They have a defeat. God corrects the sin. God uses that to point out the sin in their life and corrects it. And then it's time immediately to move forward. That's what you do after suffering a defeat. You move forward. Regardless of what that defeat is. That could be in a relationship defeat, a problem at home. You fix the problem, you seek God, and you move forward. Lisa and I believe, have a great marriage. But like any marriage, I'm not perfect, so there are rough days. Wow, nobody laughs at all about that? That's rude, guys. Come on. That's harsh. We all understand I'm not perfect, but you at least give me a courtesy chuckle or something. It would do neither of us any good to focus on those rough days and, just sit there licking our wounds. You know what helps fix the problem and move forward? Could be a spiritual defeat. Every one of us in here is just a sinner saved by grace. You have days you fall. And it does no good just lying there crying in self-pity. Get up, seek God, fix the problem, and move forward for God. It could be any other kind of defeat. For Joshua and the children of Israel, there was still much work to do. They had just gotten in the promised land. They had just begun. There are victories to be won. There's land to be taken. Simply, condensed, there was work to still be done. Still a lot of land to be conquered. Just say, for us in here today, there is work to be done. There's still land to be taken. There's still souls to be won. Move forward. Move forward. I know there are days, there are times where there are defeats that are taken, and there are hardships. There's, for my entire life, I've heard, pastors talking about the whole thing of, quitting on Monday morning after a rough Sunday type thing. I understand there are defeats that are taken. There are hardships. There are days that we think, boy, I just can't anymore. There's still work to be done. There's still a lot of land to be taken. There's still souls to be reached. We don't have time to just say, you know what, I'm hurt. I'm just going to sit on the side for a little bit and recover. Move forward. I'm going to get ready to wrap this up this morning. Brother Kyle's still in here. He hasn't left to go get food yet, so that's good. That's what I've been gauging it off of, Brother Kyle. If he keeps looking at his watch, I know I need to hurry. So I'm going to wrap this up this morning before Brother Kyle has to sneak out for carne asada. Defeats will happen. We don't like them. They hurt. They often leave a scar that's always going to be there. Those men that were lost at AI were forever lost. It's not as if, just because they got things right, those men came back. They died in battle and were lost forever. But it serves no purpose to lie on the ground crying over defeat. So what are you going to do when you get knocked down, when you face defeat? Well, what we ought to do, get up, seek God, and keep moving forward. So I'm just about done. I don't know what you're facing in your church, where you guys are all coming from, but I know in ministry we face defeats. Things that knock us down, things that hurt. And it would be pretty easy to get discouraged, to get bitter maybe, to get complacent. Let me encourage you this morning, and I pray that this has been, get back up, stay in the fight, seek God, and keep moving forward. Because there's a lot of work left to do. We're not done yet. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer. Lord, I